Book 4 of Legend of Korra has just premiered. I've been wanting to learn how to make cameos for a while, and I thought why not start with my favorite family on this show, the Beifongs. I love all the colors that are associated with their family, and I love all of their character designs so much, so their silhouettes would look amazing on these pendants. What I did was with my frame, I rolled up a ball of clay and pressed it down. This will be the base that I put the character's face on. I'm demonstrating with Toff, but basically for the face, I used a different color clay so I could keep track of everything. And I layered pieces on based on how they're protruding, I guess you could say. So the lowest point I decided to start with was her hair. What I did for her hair was make a circle and then cut out some curves. And then for her headband, I rolled up a slim piece of clay and laid it down on her hair based on what I saw in a reference picture. And I pressed it down to make it flat. I also trimmed the excess edges of the headband with my knife. Adult Toph only has a little emblem on the center of her hair, kind of like Jasmine in Aladdin, and so I just took a spare little ball and pressed it down at the top of the band. With another circle of clay, I cut out some curves to make her face. And before sticking her face on, I made a little oval and squished it into the size of her ear and stuck that on near the headband. And I just kept on making all these little pieces. I made some teardrop looking shapes for her bangs, a column for her neck, and a rectangle for the collar of her uniform. And I did the same with Lin and Sue's. I definitely had a reference picture on hand to keep track of what pieces I needed to make. The Lin one I had already made beforehand, so I put the Sue and Toph one on a baking sheet, and I placed it in my toaster oven at 275 degrees for a whole hour. The instructions of this polymer clay are to bake it for 275 degrees for 15 minutes for every quarter inch, and these pieces are about an inch wide. Now, if you're using your toaster oven, don't be forgetful like me and make sure you set your setting to warm. Mine was on bake and they kind of became this lovely toasty black color. I actually had to stop the toaster oven while I was baking because I just smelled burning coming from my kitchen. Luckily it wasn't too bad and they still ended up hardened like I needed them to, so no harm done. After that, to finish the models and to protect them, I took some of my clear acrylic spray, shook it up, and sprayed the models with them, making sure to get into every little nook and cranny. I let those dry for an hour before I used them for the molds. For the molds, I used this Cast & Craft Easy Mold silicone putty. Basically, there's two different parts that you mix together. There's this purple putty and this white putty, and you take equal parts, mix them together by kind of kneading until there are no swirls, and then you roll it into a ball, flatten it down, and then press it over your object, or press the object into your putty. And then you leave it there for about 24 minutes. I've experienced before that if you're too slow about it, it will get to the point where it's not kneadable anymore and it's stuck in whatever shape you happen to leave it in, so try to be quick about it. And after 24 minutes, I carefully pulled the models out of their molds. And the instructions said to use them for resin. I had to let them cure for another 24 hours, but I'm impatient and I wanted to use them right away, so I just did the heat cure method, which is also in the instructions. Basically, I put the molds on a baking sheet and put them in the oven for 30 minutes at 350 degrees. After they cooled down, they were ready to use. What I'm using for the epoxy resin is this clear cast epoxy resin, and it also comes in 2 parts. Just like the mold, you mix them in equal parts. I put them in a cup. And with a clean popsicle stick, I mix the mixture together for 2 minutes. I'm only using this resin mixture for one color right now, which is the face. So I poured the whole mixture in another cup, got a new lolly stick, and mixed the mixture for another minute. After that, I took my resin pigment, which is also from Cast & Craft, and put a drop into the mixture. And for good measure, I mixed it all together for another minute to get the color really integrated. After that, I used the clay models to wedge beneath the molds to keep them nice and even. And I poured the white resin into the molds. I was only doing it for the face, so I just poured it up until it filled in all of the face parts. Lin's is a little flatter, so it ended up just kind of filling the whole thing. And you can use a toothpick to move the resin into places that it didn't quite reach. For example, the end of Sue's hair gave me a lot of problems, and I had to check multiple times to make sure resin was setting in that area. After that, I covered them up to make sure no dust got into them, and waited 24 hours for it to get tacky. So after 24 hours, it was decently hardened, and I mixed another resin mixture. Since I'm doing the backgrounds of the cameos now, and I wanted the backgrounds to be 3 different colors, I divided the mixture among 3 different new cups, got 3 different new popsicle sticks, and mixed them all again for a minute each. And then I added my pigments for each one. For Lin's, I think of the black of her armor, so I just used black for hers. For Toph, I always think of her green from the original series, so I used this emerald green for hers. I should have got some yellow or even put some yellow food coloring in there because her green is more of a lime green, but whatever. And with Sue, I always think of her really pretty gray hair, and so I mixed black and white together to make gray. And then I just filled the cameos up to the brim. Toph's was really pretty to watch because you can still see her silhouette through it. The mixture ended up being kind of translucent. And Sue's ended up coming out the super pretty silver color. Definitely made me think of the Metal Clan. And I covered them up again to let them set. After 72 hours, the cameos were nice and hard, and I pried them carefully from their molds. With Lynn's cameo, it's been taking out tiny little purple pieces like this. It's not too big of a deal, but it's hard to get them out, so I'll probably have to use a protectant with Lynn's mold from now on. Like I expected with Lynn's cameo, since it was more shallow, it was all white when I took it out. So I just went in with a small brush and some black acrylic paint and filled in all the background areas that were white. For Toph and Sue's cameo, since their silhouettes protruded a lot and they were really big, it ended up making the base bigger than the original model, so I had to go in with my X-Acto knife and saw it down to size. After that, Toph and Sue's cameos fit into the frame quite snugly. And with Lynn and Sue's cameos, there was a really thin extra edge from some overflow, so I just went in with some scissors and cut that off. After that, the cameos were done. Even though they're not all quite uniform, I'm still pretty pleased with how they came out. Lynn's is a little flatter compared to what I wanted, but it's also closer to an actual cameo, where the silhouette doesn't protrude that much. But I also like the way Sue and Toph's protrudes, but it makes the mold bigger than it needs to be. Plus, the fact that Toph and Sue's silhouettes are bigger kind of obscures the color of the background a little bit. So I'm gonna have to play around with these molds a little bit, maybe finding a happy marriage between the way Lynn's is designed and Toph and Sue's are designed. Or perhaps I may have to make two separate molds for just the round base, and another for the silhouette itself to maybe glue on later. I don't know. Either way, I have a really good starting point to come off of because these are really gorgeous. And I'm gonna have a really fun time figuring out some funky ways to put this family tree on a chain. Anyway, I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoy the rest of Book 4 of Legend of Korra. I'll see you on another Tuesday for another Musi Maldi, where I show off all my fun little creative projects. Bye!